Welcome to BlvdHome. I'm here in our showroom today to talk to you about the advantages of Glue Down LVP and why it's so underrated. So let's start understanding what the difference is between a floating floor LVP and a glue down LVP. In reality, they're the same product on top. So it's still a vinyl pitcher. It still has a 20 mil wear layer. It just doesn't have the core. So the glue down LVP does not have a core. You can see how it's more flexible than the rigid LVP with an SPC core or a WPC core. The glue down LVPs come in different overall thicknesses, but whether it's a 2 mil, 2.5, a 3.0, or a 5.0, overall thickness for a glue down LVP, what you're getting on top is still the same. A great quality LVP that can withstand commercial and residential wear and tear. When it comes to installing LVP in your home or in a commercial environment, the number one thing that we always have to keep in mind and take into consideration is floor prep, floor prep, floor prep. Regardless of what product you're putting on top, whether it be a floating LVP or a glue down LVP, you still need to do floor prep. However, with a glue down LVP, you're gonna need to spend a little extra time in making sure the floor is a little bit smoother, a little bit flatter. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the smoother you get it, the less will translate up through the bottom and to the top of the glue down LVP. There are lots of applications, places that you can put a glue down LVP. Quite frankly, they're the same as a floating floor. Now let's talk about the key benefits of glue down LVP. There are some interesting advantages if you put a glue down LVP in your basement, let's say. The glue down LVP, if installed with a moisture barrier adhesive, will handle that moisture and probably last longer and can probably be dried out faster and better than a floating floor. Why is glue down LVP so underrated? Well, I think it's a lot to do with marketing. However, the floating floors in the LVP category are really friendly to DIY. So those that want to and have the skills to do it, it's a little bit easier to deal with. You don't have to deal with the adhesive, but in my opinion, the glue down advantages outweigh the DIY. However, having a professional installer help you out on either one is the best way to go. Less stress on the homeowner. Glue down LVP is also perceived as harder to install, but it's not. The big fear is the adhesive. It's really not that big of a deal. And once you put out that adhesive, the adhesive already has built-in qualities that it will change color when it's ready. It's not that difficult. It can be maybe a little messy, but if you're careful, you can keep the place nice and clean, and in the end, you're gonna love it. Another overlooked advantage is the fact that it's glued down to your floor, and it's gonna be there a long time. It's extremely durable, just like a floating LVP, but the advantages, in my opinion, outweigh the fact that if moisture gets down there, on a floating floor, the moisture is gonna get around and underneath it, but on a glue down, it's glued straight down to the concrete or the wood subfloor, and there's nowhere for the water to go. Once it is glued down by the adhesive, it doesn't move and stretch as much as a floating floor does as the temperatures change. You can cut height to cabinets, to exterior doorways, and you don't have to have the trim pieces. For me, that's huge. Plus, some of the advantages are the glue down LVP, like floating floor LVP, also comes in tile look and wood look, and you can transition easily from a wood look floor to a tile look floor. One of the main differences between a float and click LVP floor and a glue down floor is the noise. A floating floor, if you've got some minor imperfections underneath it, can make some clapping noises that are annoying. But with a glue down, no noise. It's down tight. Another advantage of a glue down LVP is, unlike a floating floor, when you put your baseboards back on and you set it on top of the LVP, you cannot caulk the bottom of that baseboard. That LVP that's a floating floor has to be able to move. On the other hand, with a glue down, you can put the baseboard right on top of the glue down, and you can put a small bead of caulk if you like that look. Also, it'll prevent any water from getting underneath the baseboard. Another Another advantage of a Glue Down LVP is maintenance and repair. I've got a lot of landlords and they're now taking the carpet completely out of their rental units and they're putting Glue Down LVP everywhere. It's easy to maintain. When the renter moves out, it's easier to clean. If there's a repair that needs to be done, you can just heat up a plank, peel it up and put it back down. So another advantage of Glue Down LVP, if you went with the thinner overall thickness like a 2.0 or 2.5, the cost point on those versus a floating clicking floor are quite a bit lower. So you could save a little bit of money by going with a Glue Down LVP. When it comes to Glue Down LVP, there are a few manufacturers that make a Glue Down LVP with a sound barrier pad attached on the back. It's a lot more expensive, but you don't have to do the double stick glue down. Another advantage I forgot to mention about the Glue Down LVP is that the thicker overall 5mm thick floors, if they say it can be loose laid, that means it can be laid and installed without any adhesive at all. Personally, I would recommend doing a full spread glue all over. However, if you don't want to do that, maybe the very minimum, do a perimeter glue around the room. But that's a very huge advantage. It does make it a little more DIY friendly when you purchase. It costs a little bit more, but the 5mm overall thickness LVP glue down. So let's talk about some of the disadvantages, if you want to call them that. For example, two-story home. Let's say we put the glue down in the basement, but the floor above, we wanted to put down a floating click floor because it's got a pad attached and it can be a little bit quieter to the people on the basement floor. Also, you can add a sound barrier pad underneath that floating floor. Glue Down LVP on a second floor would probably be noisier to the people living on the floor below. Another disadvantage of a Glue Down LVP is, let's say you're gluing it down on top of concrete. Well, that means the floor is going to be a little bit colder. It's definitely going to be harder. It's not going to be soft like a floating clicking floor would. And over time, that might hurt your joints a little bit, especially if you're elderly and you're already dealing with some joint issues. It's maybe not the best choice. Another disadvantage to a Glue Down LVP might be demo, right? It's been 10, 20 years, you're ready to make a change. Now you want to pull that up. Yeah, a floating floor is a lot easier to rip out because it's not attached to the floor. But it can be done. It's not that difficult. However, it is a disadvantage in the long run. Another disadvantage is it's not as easy of a DIY as a floating floor. Let's face it, dealing with the adhesive can scare a lot of people out of the idea of DIYing their own Glue Down LVP. However, there's a lot of tutorials online on how to install a Glue Down LVP, and once you watch a few of those, you're like going, well, that isn't that bad. Especially once you get the floor prep out of the way and the floor's nice and clean, and then you spread out that adhesive and let it flash, and then you still have time to work with it even after it flashes, sometimes up to an hour. It's not as difficult as you think. You just got to overcome the negative impressions about a Glue Down LVP DIY. Keep in mind, here at BlvdHome, we have some of the best installers. They would love to come and help you put in your new Glue Down LVP so that you don't have to. If you appreciate the content in this video, please like and subscribe and tell us what you think. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.